Okay. Hi, Kathy. Welcome to the podcast. Very glad you could make it.
Hi, Samir. Thank you for inviting me.
Great. And Kathy, we connected because you wrote recently an article on LinkedIn, a post on LinkedIn, and the title of that was "How Agile Killed Managers," and it just got so popular. And I was reading the comments today. What prompted you to write the article?
Well, first of all, I'm a manager.
Okay.
I've been a manager for a number of years. My current title is Director of Software Engineering, and it's interesting how the Agile transformation transformed my job and transformed my life, and I can see how some of my peer managers struggle, and I can see how sometimes there is a rift between individual contributors and Scrum Masters and Agile Coaches and managers, and so that's what triggered me to write that article.
And it's really well written in terms of you write about what they can do, how they can be a hindrance, what did they lose, and yeah, it's really well written and all the points. And currently, in my experience, I've experienced some of those too. But how have you made the transition, or what are the things, maybe a couple of specific things that you have done yourself, being a manager, to adopt?
I think the most important part is to transition, which wasn't a big issue for me, okay. But for many people, it's an issue to transition from the traditional command and control mode to being a servant leader. And some people just naturally inclined, and some people really like to nurture and to give and to provide resources and to help other people grow and become successful. And so I think that's the most painful transition for many people, for many managers. And probably another important aspect is to simply understand the importance and the power of teams. And that's something that, again, in a traditional environment where we had individuals reporting into us or groups of people that were created for a project or for a short-time assignment, we didn't feel that power. But in Agile, one thing that I probably love about Agile and Scrum most of all is the how it focuses on teams. And once you built your teams, you went through all kinds of stuff together, you bonded, you created that trust where you trust each other and you can be vulnerable with each other, but most importantly, you can be honest with each other, and you can confront issues, and you can communicate openly and honestly, which you don't do much, in the corporate environment. You really sometimes, on many occasions, there is a conflict of interest. But when you went through all of this with your team, that team can do anything.
I was talking to someone yesterday, I think, and we were talking about the same topic, about teams. How teams are so critical. The longer they stay together, the better it is. We know that. But in today's environment, if you look at a team, first of all, there's turnover. Secondly, there are consultants who come and go, and most teams are sort of a mix of it. Do you find that as a challenge?
Yes and no. I think it depends on the company, and I know your blog focuses on the role of Scrum Master, right. and that's very interesting how you can go so many different ways about full-time Scrum Masters or part-time Scrum Masters or combined or rotating role. And it's the same about teams, depending on the company and depending on the environment. The company that really builds itself around teams will not have a lot of those problems. Yes, people come and go, people find other jobs, or you hire new people, but you have to be careful and keep that core. If you have the core of 3-4 people, that they can absorb and then can help others to, they can onboard other people and still keep that togetherness and still keep that team spirit. But if you start moving people around, or, I talk to a lot of people about Agile and I hear all kinds of stuff, and people tell me about Scrum teams that have 40 people, or people who who are assigned to 5 different Scrum teams at the same time. When I hear those stories, I'm like, Yeah, they say they do Agile, but that's not how you build teams.
But, on your sort of current team, what are the kind of people who report into you? Are they Scrum Masters or are they like technical folks?
So I have my own, well, it's not only me, I know other people in other companies who work in this, who follow this model. In my environment, we don't have professional full-time Scrum Masters. So, no.
Okay.
No. So my organization is, right now I have about 50 people reporting into me, and so we have about like 8 Scrum teams. Okay. Each Scrum team has a Scrum Master who is also a technical person on the team. So it's a part-time position or role. It's a part-time role where people have to volunteer to be in that role, and it's rotating. So it doesn't have to be forever. It might be for several months or a year, and then maybe somebody else will volunteer and take that role.
So it's voluntary and it's rotational. Wow.
Yes.
So how is it working?
It works great, actually, and I'm a strong believer. I think that's how it should be, because first of all, I want my teams to be completely self-organized, and I want to give them my trust and autonomy. And I believe that the only way to learn how to drive is to get behind the wheel. And so if they need to be, I want them to be self-organized. I have to give them the space and the ability to actually organize themselves without an external person who would be in charge of creating that, organizing the team as a Scrum Master. I want that person to be trusted by the team, to be one of the team, to be able to, to be able to communicate with the team, not as a, like I said, not as a outsider, not as a project manager who people need to report or provide status to, but as one of the teams who can recognize the issues and escalate them to somebody else, but can also be with the team. Another important reason for me is I see that as a great opportunity to provide development opportunities for people on my team. Right. People who are technical, individual contributors, but they have natural leadership abilities, or they want to develop, they want to grow. That's a perfect role for them to be, because that will help them to facilitate, to become that servant leader. So instead of hiring out and bringing a leader from outside, I would much rather give that opportunity to somebody on my team.
So like, if I am one of your team members and I volunteer, I want to be Scrum Master, then what? If someone else wants to be, how does that work in practice?
Well, usually when the team is new, there's one person who volunteers, and I do certain training, and I say, really listen, like, you have only 5 things to do. It's a very small role. I don't expect you to spend more than 1 hour of your time every day. You have to be, first of all, you have to be an Agile enthusiast. I expect you to like Agile. I expect you to engage others. I expect you to explain it to others, and keep Scrum, be the Scrum Master. And I really like that term, because in my mind, whoever invented the term, whoever came up with the word master, they were geniuses, because they didn't say manager, they didn't say leader, they didn't say the Lord of the Scrum, because all of those words imply authority, power, right? Yeah. Whereas master, it implies skillfulness and ownership. Okay. And that's the pure leadership without authority. And so be an Agile enthusiast, host the meetings and schedule the meetings and host the meetings. Make sure the artifacts are organized and updated, and they don't have to do it themselves. Right. It's another interesting exercise, if you want to be a leader, how to engage others, how to delegate, how to make others help you without necessarily doing all of that, organization yourself. So that's just, and finally, just be the glue that keeps the team together, help them to collaborate, help them to really find that synergy, not just, talk to each other, but really come together as one, one team.
So do the rotating Scrum Masters also develop on the teams?
Yes, they are. Okay. They are developers or testers.
Okay.
In certain cases, business analysts. Yes, they are team members.
Okay. And then, so do you have a product owner role now?
Yes.
You have product owner. Okay.
Yes. And that's an interesting point that you're making. And I know a lot of people would be surprised or confused or would be arguing that the Scrum Master has to be a full-time job, because if you notice, I never said the Scrum Master removes impediments.
Yeah.
and I did this on purpose because I think we are, I work for Premier, and we are an agile shop. Mm-hmm. All the layers in the organization understand agility and aim for agility. And so we don't have a lot of impediments. And if something comes up, which is out of the team's control and obviously out of the Scrum Master's control, there are people in the organization whose job it is to remove that impediment once and for all. Right. And like I said, I'm the director. I see this as my role. If something is not working, if some process is manual or takes a lot of time, or there's a part of the organization that's hard to navigate, I see that as my job to improve it. I see that as my boss, who's the vice president. I see this as his job to make it work so that the team can be in this perfect environment where they can do their best and do what they do best. They can develop.
So what's an example of an impediment that Scrum Master has got to you and you help resolve?
So let's say the team comes together in the morning and suddenly their test environment is not accessible. Okay. So that's something that they don't have a lot of control over that. So there are people, there's the tech ops infrastructure team who is there and can be immediately engaged and will help them do that. Or somebody doesn't have access, or there's some integration that is not working. There are people in the organization that would immediately jump on it and do whatever it needs to be done.
So, this mode that you're operating in, was it always like this, or did you have full-time Scrum Masters and did you transition? Or?
Well, as a company, we have different approaches. I know some pockets in the company, they have something that's called iteration managers, where the development or engineering managers act as Scrum Masters. Okay. To be honest with you, I don't subscribe to that model because, like I told you, I think when you put a manager as part on the team, that creates a conflict of interest. People wouldn't be, want to say, oh, be open, be honest with me. But that just doesn't work this way because I'm also the person who evaluates them, who judges them, who makes decisions about bonuses and salary raises. So conflict of interest. So that's why I think the best way to engage the team, but also give them the idea of leadership, is to find a volunteer Scrum Master on the team, but only if your overall company, if your environment is agile, because otherwise it just wouldn't work.
So do you have like Agile Coaches, or you don't have anything like that?
We don't have, at this point, we don't have Agile Coaches, but we do have a number of managers, including myself, including my boss, who are really Agile enthusiasts. And so I think that a lot of my role is to be that Agile coach. And I would like to have somebody else who would help me, especially in different capacity, different ways, helping with the teams, continue sending that message and continue building the teams, but also working with the entire organization, looking for ways we can improve our processes in terms of the process, but also in terms of the technology, because a lot of aspects, when you think about agility, only like a little piece is process, the rest is technical, the rest is technology, because you need to automate, you need to eliminate that waste,
Being sort of the leader of this group, how technical are you?
I have a strong technical background, which means that I don't write code, haven't written for years. And when you become a manager, it's interesting that usually you become a manager and you start managing the team that you worked for. And that's the point where you still know the product really well, inside out. You know the code, you know the technology. And then as you continue, every time you come to a new place, you don't have time and you don't have the ability to actually go deep down into the technology. So I feel like at my level, I do understand the development process, and my years of my experience as a developer help me to understand the development process, the development cycle, everything that goes into it, with like source control and environments and builds and deployments. So I understand how it should be done, but I don't write code and I don't read code.
Yeah. One of the in your article, in your post, one of the items you said that one way that these managers can add more value is by being an SME or being an architect or being like a technical lead. Sometimes these managers get to be managers and then lose touch with technology. Or sometimes technology shifts, like suddenly you go to open source and there's this whole new ecosystem. Do you think they need to now go back to school or go back and learn this?
I think you have to stay updated on the technology as a whole. I don't think everybody have to actually be able to build something or write something, even though I know people who really like to be like hands on the keyboard, creating proof of concepts, try and download and trial versions. But I think it's more important to have a broader vision and know what's out there, what's available, which new technologies, tools, like, containers, or what's out there and what can be done, how you can benefit from it, and if it's licensed, that has some cost, or if it's an open source, kind of be open-minded and know where the industry is and how your product can benefit from it. I think that's important.
Do you play a role in like prioritizing the work for the team in any way, shape, or form?
Partially, yes, because like I told you, like we have our product management group, and they do a really great job of managing the backlogs and prioritizing the issues and working with the teams really closely on grooming. I guess grooming is not the word we're using these days, right? But on sizing and prioritization. However, that's only one like stream of requirements that goes into the sprint. There's also technical debt, and there's also technical improvements that we want to do, and that those are driven by the engineering organization. So those are prioritized, and we collaborate with the product management to explain them the importance of some of the technical work that might not have an immediate value for the customer, but might prevent you from doing something else, like going forward.
Right. Have you had I'm just wondering if you had an issue with someone volunteers for being a Scrum Master, and then they go back to the team and someone else now sort of replaces them. Do they itch to get back to Scrum Master role? I don't know. Has that happened?
Actually, we had one team where we had, so the current Scrum Master is the third person in that role. Okay. And I think it worked out pretty well. I mean, the first guy who volunteered, he kind of stepped down. He tried for a couple of months, and then he said, you know what, I do not enjoy it. And so there was another person who volunteered, and then he switched into a slightly different role, and there was someone else. And I think that I haven't seen conflict, kind of in relation to who wants to be the Scrum Master. So far, it worked pretty smooth. Okay. But I don't know. I think people kind of appreciate when you've been in that role, you appreciate what it means to to keep everybody together, to make sure everything gets done, and to make sure that the team plans realistically, that they have that limit their work in progress. All of that you have to remind the team, all of this. So I think there is an appreciation that comes when you've tried that, and that sometimes it's not easy.
And what do you look for when you hire people on your team?
When I hire people, first of all, we're looking for a certain technical skill set, of course, and certain experiences. But beyond that, I'm looking for attitude of innovation and creativity and ability to transform, ability to take the lead, take the initiative, and say, hey, I think what we're doing is wrong, and maybe we can do better. Maybe we can do it somehow, like, in a different way. Or here's something that I read, like, here's the tool that I've been exploring. How about we try? I'm looking for people like that.
It's so interesting the way you're operating, and the people that I've spoken to. There is a growing there's a growing realization that this is a good model, and other people are using it too, from other people I've spoken to. So it's very interesting to see where this is going to go. It's the whole.
I'm glad to hear that, and I think it's happening because more and more companies actually realize that doing Agile is not enough.
Correct.
Going through that process is not enough. The real transformation and the real agility is what you need to do. And it's painful. It requires a lot of reorganization, technical, and also from HR perspective, from the process perspective, from this whole change management perspective. But when you do it, you become agile. You become so, it becomes a lightweight process. And so I prepared for this conversation. So I printed out, this is one section from the Scrum Guide that talks about the responsibilities of the Scrum Master. And what strikes me about this, there's one sentence here in the section about Scrum Master service to the development team, which says, coaching the development team in organizational environments in which Scrum is not yet fully adopted and understood. And I think that just nails it. It's not about whether the team is mature or not. It's about the organization itself. If the organization is messy and there's a lot of bureaucracy, nobody has permissions, it's impossible to navigate, everything requires a 2-week notice, and that you don't know if it's going to happen. There's no Agile, there's no Scrum, and you have to have a person who will be navigating that mess, and that's probably your Scrum Master. But that's not agility.
Who does financial reporting or things like that on your teams?
What do you mean financial reporting?
Is there a time reporting system? Is there monthly financial reports that steering committees that you need to submit to, or things like that?
Well, that's another interesting point. So we do it very simply. First of all, it's done on the management level, and we do it very simply. We just simply the budget is allocated to the team. There's a team, there's headcount. They work on a product. That product is their project, and there is a certain amount of money that allocated for the entire year, and they just work through the backlog. But I know why you asked the questions. My previous job was for a company that was very project-oriented, and it was based on chargebacks, and every project had a budget, and every team worked on 20 projects at a time, and as managers, we had this very complicated financial reporting system with budgets and projections and spend, and this is not, an environment like this is the exact opposite of Agile. So if you try to do, and I tried to build a Scrum team in that environment, and it was very difficult. I still think that people who are really real Agile enthusiasts, they can do it. They can start, kind of through the grassroots, build something like that, and try being Agile in environments like that. But definitely you need a Scrum Master. You need somebody to navigate that world.
How do you handle support on your teams? Do the same teams support the product?
Interesting question. So basically, in my experience, you can go 3 different ways. You can have a dedicated team that does only support. You can have a dedicated person on your team that only works on maintenance, or you can say my entire team basically they have 2 kind of streams, 2 feeds. The product backlog, but also customer support issues that come from the customers. Each team is different. That's the conversation I have with every team, because normally they are the people who know the product, more better than anybody else and know like what level of disruption and like what because there are several different aspects to it. Mm-hmm. If it's a separate team and then there's the main team who works on the product, would they be comfortable with letting someone else touching their code? Right. And how those changes will flow into one branch or so all those. So some teams are really comfortable with basically working on customer issues in parallel to their sprint work, which means that their overall velocity, when they work on the sprint scope, their velocity will be slightly lower. It wouldn't be 100%. So let's say they will spend like 20% on customer issues and then 80% on sprint work. But if it's steady, if it's consistent, then you don't care. That's their velocity anyway.
Yeah, it's so interesting, this model, and if you're interested, I'll try to connect you with the other folks that I spoke to who are operating like the similar model that you're talking about.
Okay, great.
Great. Is there anything that we haven't touched that you would like to share?
No, I think that's been a very interesting conversation. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I also was reading your LinkedIn profile, and one of the things that it says is you empower girls and women to be engineers and be in tech. How do you do that?
So we have a lot of, we are pretty deeply connected with our local university, North Carolina State. Okay. And so we work with the students on projects. They also have clubs, and so one of the clubs is Women in Computer Science Club. And so I kind of participate in their events, and they come and normally they invite women from IT and from the companies in our area. And we talk about different things, and we talk about, we discuss several different topics. I personally volunteer at our local Boys and Girls Club. And so every once in a while, I do like little sessions on STEM on computers. And I always send a message to girls that if they want to play with computer, if they want to do something, they want to write a program, they can definitely do that.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, this is a great conversation for the audience that I am doing this research. And I think Scrum Masters need to hear this, that this is a model and it works, and there is, there is kind of extreme. There is the Scrum Master who said the only job of the Scrum Master is to make sure Scrum is being followed. And then, they need to hear this conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Great.